I'm second-guessing my decision not to run at this point because the Providence Journal also reported this afternoon that my representative, Michael Moran, newly elected to the House of Representatives, and his, I'm going to use the term partner in crime at this point, Stephen Casey, whose campaign I did work on in Woonsocket, are firmly in the Mattiello camp. And I think that is a bad move for them politically. And I will throw this out there right now. If, in fact, Michael Moran votes in favor of Nicholas Mattiello for Speaker of the House, I will run for District 49 representative come November. I will win, and I will make sure that Mr. Moran has a very short and very uneventful political career.
Now, that's not just an idle threat. I've never heard you be that PO-like.
I have to. I am almost physically ill thinking that my representatives are going along with the same group of leaders that have been around in leadership positions since, through Bill Murphy and since, I always forget this guy's name, the guy that was before him.
Harwood. Yeah.
Harwood Murphy, right? So these guys have been kicking around leadership since then. And if there's any testament to why the state is in the shape that it's in today, it is because we have not had any type of effective leadership in the House to get any good legislation, any changes to our government, any changes to openness, transparency, and actual sticking to the rules of the House. And if they think that they can get in that camp and it's not going to come back and haunt them come November, they're both sorely mistaken.
And they haven't, the current regime, I should say, that's been in place for how many years? Really a generation, has not been kind to Woonsocket either.
No. Woonsocket is the forgotten city of Rhode Island. I say this all the time, but a lot of times I think that our General Assembly believes that the Rhode Island border is Route 295. And anything north of that is no man's land.
Right.
Woonsocket, and add insult to injury, the city of Woonsocket for 150 years was a economic and social driver in this state. That was the home of the textile revolution in this state. So guess what, folks? If your family moved down to Tiverton or down to South County in the last generation, it's because their parents worked at the mills in Woonsocket and made a living for themselves. So let's get real about how we deal with state funding cities and cities taking care of themselves, and take some of the power back from the state and put it back in local people's hands, back in local government's hands, because that's the only way we're going to fix this state is from the ground up.
Wow, that's almost downright libertarian of you. I got to tease you a little bit, but ultimately, without belaboring the point and without rehashing what we talked about just a brief time ago, why haven't other progressive Democrats like you risen up in this type of anger? Where is the overt hostility? I always liken the current situation to this. We're very friendly. It's not Gordon Fox. It's Gordon. It's as Ted Nesi pointed out, he was always very polite. All these guys are just hail fellows, great guys. And I always ask the question, is there any difference between these people and the guy who broke in and just stole your flat screen TV?
Yeah, one of them gets arrested and prosecuted.
Until this week.
Another one wears nice, expensive suits. And
so why don't people get pissed off?
I don't know. I honestly think it's because they don't want to, and this is obviously a compulsion that I don't have. They don't want to come off like jerks. I don't care if I come off like a jerk.
That's why we're friends.
Because sometimes if you're going to get your point across, sometimes you have to be a jerk. Sometimes you have to be abrasive. And sometimes you have to ask people very pointed questions. And when they don't answer you, you have to press them on the issue. And if they continue to not answer them, you have to go outside in front of your house and ring a giant bell and say, this person is not listening.
I think also a lot of people don't really understand what local government could be doing for them differently, particularly if you haven't lived in another state where some local governments actually work better, where people lose office if they do a bad job, where
there's accountability.
Yeah, there's some accountability, and there's structure in place, and it's less of a everybody scratches everybody else's back kind of an attitude.
Yeah, and we definitely have that in this state, and I think it's exacerbated by the fact that we're so small and that we have, 39 communities that,
John
that
Harwood,
all want some level of autonomy.
Right.
And
they want spoils, too, to be honest. I mean, John Harwood stayed in office as long as he did because his community didn't want to lose what he was able to pull from the pie for them. He barely lost in a close write-in campaign after his huge scandal.
Right, and
barely lost, which is just astonishing. The fact that he would even run again, and the fact that he would come so close to keeping his office, is pretty outrageous.
Well, ultimately, if you look at the last half a dozen regimes, it's all been about generating business for their private law practices.
Right.
The spoils they take from them are not overtly illegal. Except something obviously is amiss now. But they're not overtly illegal. But the Benny is, if you've got a law practice, you walk away with the clout and the wiring to have a lucrative post-electoral career. That's why so many of these guys step down before they're older. I mean, if you notice, the prototype for this is for them to step down in their mid to late 40s, early 50s, while they've still got a healthy 10 or 15 years ahead of them for which to profit from the connections they've made.
Right, and they can use that not openly, but covertly, of course, as a selling point.
Right.
I have connections, I can grease the wheels, I can get things done for you.
Right. What's frustrating to me is that so many progressive Democrats, whom I agree and disagree with on certain fundamental issues, but whom I hold in great admiration for their willingness to get the kind of street cred, for example, that you have, willing to be involved in civic affairs, to volunteer, to promote their communities, and also to run for office, something that libertarians can learn from progressive Democrats. These people, while I don't always agree with them, these people as a group genuinely care, which makes all the more baffling their willingness to close their eyes, the see no evil, hear no evil act towards other Democrats. And I know, it's this weekend to me is a litmus test. If progressives that are all serious about reforming the state in whatever model they want, if they walk away with anything less than, at a minimum, the Senate majority leadership, they've lost. They need to just go home then, all right? Because their people are on the front lines. Their people have a vote. They've got a voice in the room. And they can affect change if they've got the balls to do it.
Right. Call your rep.
Yeah,
call your rep.
Hound your rep.
Yeah, it's... all the stalking rules normally apply. If you feel like feel like you're on the edge of getting some type of court order, I offer a free service. I'm willing to go out and call the guy at home. By the way, call him at home.
Better yet, call your rep and ask your neighbors to call your rep. Tell your neighbors this is important. It's important that we get someone in place who values open government, transparency, fairness. Get rid of this cronyism.
The future of the state is literally now. Joe Bernstein was in last week, who's another friend of the show, and he called me this afternoon. And of course, he's all agog about potentially certain Republicans siding with a more progressive environment. I'm convinced at this point, no matter what happens, the state's going down the tubes. So again, I see future agony on every single level. I don't know if there's a way to pull it back. I frankly think it's too late. But for the sake of argument, if the Republicans end up going along now, according to recent reports, I guess the entire Republican caucus minus Doreen Costa was allegedly with Marcello's camp, or at least
they've met with both camps.
They met with both camps. So the question, of course, is where is Doreen Costa on all this? Is Doreen Costa going to sell out to the Gordon, the Foxanistas? What happened to Mattiello versus?
She's got ads to sell, so that should play into it.
Is that this week, or is she in another job?
And raffle tickets, of course.
All right. As we go into the break, after the break, of course, we're going to focus on the next level, which is in sort of baseless conversation about all the potential causes of why Gordon Fox's offices were searched. Again, I have as much information, legitimate information on this as I do on the missing jetliner. That won't stop me from speculating on either.
Right. And it doesn't stop anybody else.
Exactly. But
so actually, if you have a theory, please hit us up on Facebook or Twitter, and we'll boot it around.
Yeah, however ridiculous the theory is, it holds a place in our heart today.
I hear rumors of Gordon Fox being a Sasquatch reptilian.
So before we head into the break, I just want to touch on, you mentioned like where's the Republican caucus going to fall?
Yeah.
I honestly think, from what I know of the reps in that caucus, that they are more likely to go with a Marcelo Blazejewski because, number one, the open government thing, and their battle in this House has been, it's a battle between those who hold power and those who expect and want to break the existing power structure. And if they want to break that existing power structure, they do not go with Mattiello and DeSimone.
Fingers crossed that they haven't been bribed in some way behind the sscenes.
No.
I'm not suggesting anyone's doing anything illegal. I'm talking about the kind of horse trading that goes on.
I mean, you would imagine that there would be at least a couple of committee. I mean, could you go so far as to have a minority member chairing a committee? Is that possible within the House rules, or are there really no rules? Well, they play Calvin ball.
The House makes up their rules every year. I mean, the rules change every single year, and I got to tell you, it's one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen. You would think it was the most boring thing to watch.
No, but it's like they're playing quarters or something. Every time somebody lands a quarter, they get to make up a new rule or something.
Well, and then you see these floor amendments, especially coming out of that Republican caucus, that are good government legislations that get voted down out of hand,
right?
Because of where they come from.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
So
I'm hoping if they get somebody in who values open government, that they actually pass something binding that makes that sort of, makes arbitrary behavior
Dave, you had some suggestions.
takes it off the table.
You had some suggestions. For example, the notion that a House rule becomes no more tabling for further. Elaborate on that.
Well, these are actually floor amendments that came out of the Republican caucus. It was at the beginning of 2013. Yeah, beginning of the session. When a bill comes to the House, to the full body of the House, insisting that there be an up or down vote on it, and none of this, we're going to send it back to committee. If there's an up vote on it, great, it becomes law, or at least goes on to the Senate. If there's a down vote on it, it goes nowhere, and the sponsor of the bill can reintroduce it.
Right.
It's that simple.
And people are on record as having voted for it or against it.
Exactly. So what they do is with unpopular bills, they take this like, oh no, we're going to send it back to committee because they don't want the political fallout from voting on those bills that are unpopular.
Right.
One of the other floor amendments I think really should go into and this is crazy, like every year, about a month before the end of the session, the House suspends the rules of the House. And that's when you start to really see the bills fly because they're no longer subject to the own rules that they pass for themselves, so that they can just like legislate away without really any public scrutiny or oversight or anything like that, which I think definitely needs to change. And I think that the tenor of what goes on in most legislation does not happen on the floor of the House, nor does it happen in committee. It happens in people's offices. Like Christine said, there's a lot of horse trading that goes on. And I think that
and some of it is necessary to get things done. People, if I want something and I'm not overly keen on your bill, but I don't hate it, it's in my best interest to hold out. But
that can't be the de facto
it shouldn't be
method of getting things done.
And unfortunately, it seems as if that is the way everything gets done, and the only way things get done.
I would agree with that.
We're about halfway through the show, which means before P.O. strokes out, we're going to take a quick break. You are tuned in to the Coalition, coalitionradio.us. Manchester 65 is New England's newest live music and events venue. If you're not completely enjoying your current live music experience, there is another option. Manchester 65 is large enough to support touring acts, yet small enough for that local feel.